Welcome to Style Scope Agile Edition. Style Scope Agile Edition is an easy-to-use tool for creating and deploying business intelligence dashboards. Style Scope Agile Edition allows you to rapidly connect to common databases and data files, mash up data from different data sources, and explore data sets with a wide assortment of filters. This video will introduce you to the major features of Style Scope Agile Edition. It will show you how to perform initial configuration, use an existing dashboard, create a data set from an Excel file, mash up data from different data sources, design a business intelligence dashboard, and perform basic administration. To install Style Scope Agile Edition, run the installer that you downloaded from the iNetsoft website. If you have previously installed Style Scope Agile Edition on your computer, you will be asked whether you want to remove existing user preferences and assets. If you are upgrading from the previous version and you wish to retain the dashboards and data sets that you have previously created, do not select the Remove Existing User Information option. Leave this option unchecked, and then press Next. Installation may take a minute or two. Style Scope Agile Edition runs as a service, which means that it starts automatically when you start your computer. On the final screen of the installer, select Start Service Now to begin the service running. Then press Finish. To launch Style Scope Agile Edition, open the Windows Start menu, locate the Style Scope Agile Edition program group, and click on Start iNetsoft Style Scope. This will start the Style Scope Agile Edition service if it's not already running, and then open Style Scope Agile Edition in a browser tab. If you are prompted to enter a license key, please do so. Then press Continue. If you are using the full licensed version, you will be prompted to enter a username for the administrator as well as a password. If you are using the free version, the administrator name is permanently set to admin. You will simply be asked to create a password for the fixed administrative user. Press Continue to proceed to Style Scope Agile Edition. It may take a moment or two for a connection to be made to the server. When you initially open Style Scope Agile Edition, you will see the Getting Started wizard. The Getting Started wizard leads you through certain basic steps that will help you get started creating data sets and dashboards. These include configuring email, which will allow dashboards to be mailed to different users, connecting to a database, which will allow you to pull live data from an existing relational database, such as Oracle, SQL Server, or MySQL, creating a data set, which allows you to construct the query that will retrieve data from your database connection, and creating a dashboard, which allows you to create the visualization of a data set that you will present to users. If you do not wish to use the links provided by the wizard, you can close the wizard and use the tabs at the top of Style Scope Agile Edition to access all of the functionality available within Style Scope Agile Edition. The first thing that we'll look at is using an existing dashboard. To access your dashboards, click on the Dashboards tab at the top of the interface. Under the Dashboards tab, you'll see both folders as well as dashboards. To open a folder, simply click on the folder. This folder is called Examples, and it contains a set of sample dashboards. To go up a level, simply click the appropriate link in the navigation bar at the top. To open an existing dashboard, simply click on the dashboard, and this will open the dashboard in the browser. To return to the list of dashboards and folders, simply click again on the Dashboards tab. Now, before we look at the dashboard itself and the various operations that you can do on the dashboard, note that there are operations that you can do as well from this screen by clicking on the menu that's attached to the individual dashboard or to the folder. For example, you can rename or delete a folder by clicking the menu for the folder, and you can rename, move, delete, or edit a dashboard by clicking on the menu for the dashboard. There's also a feature called data caching that allows you to specify how often the data in the dashboard is refreshed. Now let's look at using an existing dashboard. The dashboard that we're going to look at called Order Dashboard is the dashboard that you're going to make later in this video. To open the dashboard, simply click on the dashboard, and this opens the dashboard in the browser window. So let's take a look at these different features of this fairly typical dashboard. Firstly, the chart, in addition to displaying the sum total and the sum of quantity sold as two different data sets on the same chart, also provides a couple of nice features. The first of these is a so-called data tip, which allows you to display information about the particular point that you hover the mouse over. In this case, I'm hovering the mouse over the fourth quarter of 2014, and it displays the numerical values for the quantity and the total purchased. And I can do that for any other point on the chart. A second feature provided by this chart is the so-called Flyover view. As I hover over a given point on the chart, the detail table at the bottom of the dashboard updates to display only records corresponding to the group that I've selected, in this case the second quarter of 2014. And you'll notice that as I point at different groups on the chart, the details for each group is displayed in the table below. The input control on the right side allows me to switch the dimension that's displayed on the x-axis from a breakdown by quarter, as I have it now, to a breakdown by state. And finally, the range slider and the selection list allow me to filter the data set to display particular subsets of the data. For example, to display just data from 2015, I can adjust the range slider as so. So now I only see the 4 quarters from 2015. To display only data from particular states, you can simply select the states that you want to display by making the appropriate choices in the selection list, and the data in both the chart and the table is filtered as you have specified. An important feature of dashboards is the concept of bookmarking, which allows you to save a particular state of the dashboard. For example, if you select a particular date range and a particular set of states, you may want to save those settings so that you can revisit them at a later time. To do this, press the bookmark button at the top right corner of the dashboard and select Save as New Bookmark. You can provide a name for the bookmark, or you can use the default timestamp, and then you can choose whether this bookmark will be private, visible only to you, or shared with other users. The bookmark is now available in the bookmark list, and at a later time, after you've made some further modifications to the dashboard, if you wish to return to that bookmark, simply select it here. The dashboard will reload with the settings that have been saved in that bookmark. You can add annotations to a dashboard as well. You can add annotations both at the dashboard level, for example, by right-clicking in an empty space and selecting the Annotate option. This allows you to add a note that will be attached to the dashboard. You can also add annotations at the component level and at the data level. For example, you can add an annotation to this table by right-clicking and selecting Annotate Component. You can also add an annotation to an individual data point on a chart or in a crosstab table, and you can do this by right-clicking on the group that you want to annotate and selecting Annotate Point from the menu. You can choose to write your own annotation or use the annotation that is supplied by default. And then the annotation is attached to the particular point that you've selected. You can turn annotations on and off using the Annotate button at the top right corner. Press the Annotation button once to turn off all of the annotations. You'll note that the annotation at the dashboard level is indicated by an icon. If you hover over the icon, you will see the annotation. And likewise, the annotation on the table is indicated by an icon at the top left of the table, and the annotation on the chart is indicated by an icon at the top left of the chart. To expand all of the annotations, you can click on one of these icons, or click again on the Annotation button at the top right corner to make the annotations visible. Later in this video, you'll see how to construct this dashboard step by step, but before you do that, you'll need to create the data set that supplies the data to this dashboard. To create a new dataset, first click the Data tab at the top, and then click on the Datasets option. This page lists folders containing datasets as well as datasets themselves. In this example, we'll create a new dataset from an Excel file that contains some order information. To do this, click on the top menu and select New Dataset. This provides the option of creating a new dataset by uploading a file, by creating a database query, or by mashing up data. In this instance, because we're interested in creating a dataset from an Excel file, we'll press the Upload File button. This opens the Import Data File dialog box from which we can select the file that we want to import as the dataset. In this case, the file that we'll use is a file called orderdatatext.xls. This is an Excel file. And you'll note that there are a set of options that you can adjust depending on the type of the file that you're uploading. In this case, the options are correctly set as the defaults, and you can see that there is a preview shown of the dataset below. Press OK to proceed to save the dataset, and we'll save the dataset with the name Order Data. This returns us to the dataset screen, where now, in addition to the examples folder containing example datasets, you'll see that there is now the order data dataset that we imported from the Excel file and then saved. To perform operations on the dataset, click the Dataset menu. This allows you to rename the dataset, to move the dataset, or to delete the dataset. To edit the dataset itself, simply click on the dataset. This opens the dataset in a tool called a Data Worksheet. As you can see, the dataset is represented as a table or a data block, and within the Data Worksheet you can do a large number of operations on this data. One of the operations that we would like to do to this particular dataset is to add a new column that contains the full state name. As you can see, there already is a column that contains the state abbreviation, and in addition to that, we would like the full state name. Before we do that, however, we need to import another dataset, one that contains the state names. Let's return to the dataset page and upload the second dataset. We'll do this by repeating the procedure we did before. Select New Dataset. Again, choose the Upload File option, because in this case, again, the data is contained in a file, in this case a text file. We can select that text file, which is called statenames.csv, and then import that file as well as a new dataset. You can clearly see that the file simply contains the state names and the state abbreviations. We'll save this dataset as state names. The next thing that we need to do is mash up the data in the two datasets, the order data dataset and the state names dataset. To do this, we will create a new dataset that contains the mashup of these two datasets. From the menu at the top, again, select the New Dataset option, and this time, instead of choosing the Upload File option, we'll choose the Mashup Data option, because we want to mash up the two existing datasets. Clicking on the Mashup Data button opens a new data worksheet into which we can bring the two existing datasets so that we can mash them up. You can find the datasets listed under the Datasets node on the tree on the left side, and there you'll see the Order Data dataset as well as the State Names dataset, and you can drag each of these into the blank worksheet. Click and drag on the Order Data dataset, and click and drag on the State Names dataset. This adds the two datasets into the data worksheet, each one as its own data block. To see the actual data in the data block, you can click on the Change View button, which is in the title bar of the data block at the far right, and select Live Preview, and then resize the table as desired to see the data in that particular table. In order to create a single data block that contains all of the columns from the top data block as well as the 2 columns from the bottom data block, we need to perform an inner join between the 2 data blocks using the state column as the join column. There are 2 ways to do this. The first way is to select the 2 data blocks that you want to join, and from the Join Table button in the toolbar, select Inner Join, and then choose the join columns. In this case, the state column from the Query 11 data block, and the abbreviation column from the Query 12 data block. Press OK to complete the inner join, which produces a new data block down below containing the inner join between the 2 top data blocks. Let's look at another way to produce the same result. First, let's delete the bottom data block here, which you can do simply by selecting the bottom data block, right-clicking, and then selecting Remove, or by pressing Delete on the keyboard. Another way to create the inner join is simply to drag the join column from one data block onto the other data block. In this case, dragging the state column from the Query 11 data block onto the abbreviation column in the Query 12 data block. This creates the same inner join between those 2 data sets using the state column from the Query 11 data block and the abbreviation column from the Query 12 data block. To view the actual data in this data block, as we did before, simply press the Change View button and select Live Preview. The result of the inner join preserves all of the columns from the 2 top data blocks. And this means that we have a duplicate column because we now have the state column that comes from the Query 11 data block and the abbreviation column that comes from the Query 12 data block. To hide one of those columns, hover the mouse over the column header and note that there is an eyeball icon that allows you to set the visibility of that column. Click the icon to hide the column. To change the name of a column header, simply double-click in the column header and type the desired name. In this case, replacing the state_1 column header with the column header name state name. To rename the data block itself, select the data block by clicking on it, then right-click and select Properties, and in the Table Properties dialog box, enter a name for the data block. In this case, we'll call it Order Data Final. Press OK to rename the data block. And finally, when you have a final result set that you've created as the result of a data mashup, you should designate that final data block as the primary data block. To do this, right-click on the data block and select Set as Primary. You'll note that this changes the title to a bold font, and this means that when you use the resulting data worksheet to build your dashboard, this data set will be listed above the other data blocks. To save the mashup, press the Save button and provide a name. We can use the same name as the data block that we just named, which was Order Data Final. Now, before we close this dataset and proceed with creating the dashboard, it's worth pointing out that there are many additional operations that you can do within a data worksheet. Let's take just a moment to look at some of these additional features. Within a data worksheet, you can filter the data in a data set. And to do this, you press the Filter button in the title bar of a given data block. And this allows you to apply conditions such as company is one of some set of companies, or order date is in range of some particular date range, and so on. Additionally, you can group the data in a data block. To do this, press the Group and Aggregate button in the title bar of the data block, and then select Grouping Columns and Aggregate Columns. For example, the settings that you see here will group the data block by company and by quarter, and for each combination of company and quarter, the total column will be aggregated and the aggregate will be displayed. Finally, you can create new columns by writing expressions using either SQL or JavaScript. To do this, press the FX button in the title bar, provide a name for the new column that you wish to write, and then use the formula editor to write the expression either using SQL syntax or using JavaScript syntax. And this will create a new column in the data block. To delete the column, right-click on the column header and select Delete Columns. There are many additional features that you'll find within a data worksheet that allow you to effectively mash up and manipulate these data blocks. Please consult the documentation for the full details. With this new data set now complete, we can proceed to create a dashboard. To create a new dashboard, click the Dashboards tab at the top of the screen, and from the top menu, select New Dashboard. The first thing you'll need to do is enter a name for the new dashboard, and in this case we'll call it Order Dashboard. Select the data set that will supply the data to the dashboard. In this case, we want this dashboard to use the data that we mashed up in the data set called Order Data Final, so we'll select that data set and press OK. The new dashboard is displayed as a blank grid into which you can drag different dashboard components. To begin, we'll add a chart. From the Toolbox folder in the Component panel on the left side, drag the chart component into the dashboard. You can resize the component by clicking on the chart to select it and then dragging the handles. To move the chart, click on the Move handle at the top left corner. To populate the chart with data, you'll use the Chart Editor on the left-hand side. If you do not see the Chart Editor, press the Edit button at the top right corner of the chart. In this chart, we want to display the sum total and also the summed quantity broken out by quarter of the year. To do this, first expand the Order Data Final dataset that appears at the top of the Chart Editor, and locate the order date dimension in the Dimensions folder. Drag the order date dimension to the x-axis of the chart in the Chart Editor, and this displays the dates from the order date field on the x-axis of the chart. Note that the dates are currently grouped by year. To change this to quarter, click the Edit Dimension button next to the order date field and change the level from year to quarter. Then press the Apply button at the top right corner. The dates are now broken out by quarter. Next, we'll place two measures on the y-axis of the chart. From the top of the Chart Editor, find the measure Quantity and drag that measure down to the y-axis in the Chart Editor. And then do the same for the total measure. You'll notice that this puts the two measures, the total and the quantity purchased, on the same chart, but on different y-axes, each measure to its own axis. To place the two measures onto the same axis, press the Switch to Single Graph button in the Data panel of the Chart Editor. When you do this, both measures will be placed on the same y-axis. However, the values of the quantity purchased are much smaller than the values of the total dollar amounts, and so the quantity purchased appears as a flat line. To make the values of quantity more easily visible, you can plot these values on a secondary y-axis. To do this, press the Edit Measure button next to the Quantity field on the y-axis in the Chart Editor, and select the Secondary Axis option at the bottom. Press the Apply button, and the quantities are now plotted against a secondary y-axis on the right-hand side of the chart. Finally, to improve the appearance of this chart, move the legend from its position at the top right corner to the bottom of the chart, which will give a greater amount of space to the width of the chart. To do this, simply click and drag on the legend and drop it at the bottom of the chart. Next, we'll add a detail table below the chart. First, close the Chart Editor by pressing the red X at the top right corner of the Chart Editor, and then expand the data set at the top left corner in the Component panel. To add a table that contains all of the columns from the data set, simply drag the entire data set into the dashboard. To resize the resulting table, again, click on the table and then drag the component handles to obtain the size that you desire. Change the title of the table simply by clicking on the title bar and then typing the text. Notice that in this table we have both the state name and the state abbreviation. We can hide one of these columns. To do that, right-click on the column header and select Delete Columns. We can improve the appearance of the table by applying formats to certain of these columns, for example, the date column and the total column and the price column. To do this, for the date column, click on any cell in that date column and then right-click and select Format. This opens the Format dialog box, which allows us to specify a particular date format. For this example, select the date format and then enter a custom date format using the following formula: MMM space lowercase YYYY. This creates a format that displays the 3-letter abbreviation of the month and the 4-digit year. You'll note that there are a number of presets that you can also select from in the menu. Press OK to apply the format. For the price column, as well as for the total column, we can simply apply a currency format, and the easiest way to do that is by clicking on any value in the column and then pressing the Currency Style button in the toolbar. Resize the columns as desired by dragging on the boundaries between the columns so that all of the values in the columns can be easily seen. And then align the columns as desired by clicking on any value in the column and then pressing the desired alignment button from the toolbar. The column headers can be centered aligned by selecting all of the column headers. You can do this by shift-clicking to select all column headers and then pressing the center alignment button in the toolbar. Finally, to move columns within the table, simply click on the column header and drag the column to the desired location. The table is now complete. Next, we'll add a data tip and a flyover to the chart. The purpose of the data tip is to display some useful information when the user hovers over points on the chart. The information displayed will be essentially similar to the default tooltip that you see here, except it will be displayed in a slightly nicer format. To create the data tip, first we need to create the crosstab table that will be displayed as the data tip. We can do this down below. The crosstab table that we add here will not be displayed in this location. It will only be used as the data tip on the chart. To create the table, drag a crosstab table component into the dashboard. This adds the component to the dashboard and also opens the Crosstab Editor. Expand the Order Data Final data block in the Edit Table panel and find the Order Date field. This will be the row header for the crosstab. Drag the order date field into the row header region, and then click on the order date field and switch the level to quarter. Next, find the total measure and drag that into the measures region in the Crosstab Editor, and do the same for the quantity measure. This will give us two different measures that will be displayed for each individual quarter. Press the green Apply button at the top of the Crosstab Editor to complete the crosstab. To make the crosstab look better, we can make a couple of quick adjustments. To do this, right-click on the crosstab and select Properties. This opens the Properties dialog box for the crosstab. Select the Advanced tab, and then choose the Summary Cells Side-by-Side option. This will put the two measures side by side, and also select the Shrink to Fit option. This will shrink the height of the table to fit only as many rows as actually appear in the table. Press OK to close the Properties dialog box. To edit the text in the column header, simply double-click on the column header and edit as desired, and then resize the table if needed. Because this crosstab will be used as a data tip in the chart, we don't really need the title bar here, so we can hide that title bar by returning to the Properties dialog box for the crosstab, and under the General tab here, simply turning off the visibility of the title. This crosstab is now ready to be used as our data tip on the chart. So return to the chart, right-click on the chart, and select Properties to open the Chart Properties dialog box. And in the Data Tip View property, enable the Data Tip View option and select Crosstab 1 as the data tip. Crosstab 1 is the name of the crosstab that we created a moment ago. Press OK. To see the data tip in action, you'll need to preview the dashboard. To do that, press the Preview button in the toolbar at the top. And this provides a view of the dashboard as the user will eventually see it. Hover the mouse over a group on the chart and observe that the crosstab is displayed as the data tip. It provides the quarter and the total and quantity for that particular group on the chart. To adjust the formatting on the data tip, return to the design view by clicking the tab at the bottom, and simply apply formats to the crosstab in the same manner that you applied formats previously to the detail table. For example, the values in the total column can be represented as a currency, and the values in the quantity column can be represented with commas if desired. The size of the columns can then be adjusted to accommodate the values. And now let's add a flyover to the chart as well. A flyover is a dynamic filter that will filter another component when the user points at various groups on the chart. In this case, we'd like to filter the detail table when the user flies over the chart. To do this, right-click again on the chart and select Properties to open the Chart Properties dialog box. In the Flyover panel at the bottom, select Table View 1 as the flyover view. Table View 1 is the name of the detail table. And press OK. And the chart will now have a flyover view, which you can demonstrate even in the design view of the dashboard. Hover the mouse over a group on the chart and observe how the detail table below updates and filters to display only the values corresponding to that group, in this case the fourth quarter of 2014. Press the Save button in the toolbar to save the work that you've done so far. Next, we'll add a couple of filtering components, a selection list that allows the user to select a particular state, and a range slider that allows the user to select a range of dates. To add the selection list, find the particular field that you want to filter, in this case the state name field, and drag that field onto the dashboard. For a field that contains string-type data, this automatically creates a selection list. You can resize the component in the way that you typically would by dragging the handles of the component. The user can make choices in the selection list to filter the data set as desired. For example, to view only data from Connecticut and Maryland, the user would select those states, and the chart and the table below display only data now from those two states. To clear the selection list, press the Clear Selection button at the top right corner. To add a range slider that allows the user to select range of dates, find the date field in the data set that you want to filter, in this case the order date field, and simply drag that field into the dashboard. This creates a range slider that allows the user to select a range of dates by dragging the handles on the slider and by dragging the slider body. Double-click in the center of the slider to expand it to its full size. The final interactive portion of this dashboard will be a control that allows the user to select whether they see the order date displayed on the x-axis or whether they see the states displayed on the x-axis. To add this kind of control, find the appropriate form element, in this case a radio button will do, and drag it into the dashboard. In this example, we want the user to be able to select from two different dimensions, and since those dimensions can be found in the data set, the easiest way to add those dimensions to the radio button is simply to expand the data set, find the fields that you want the user to be able to select, such as order date, and drag those fields into the radio button. The fields will then be added as options in the radio button form element. You can resize the form element as desired to display all the options. In general, when you use form elements like this one, you should give the component a meaningful name. To do this, right-click on the component and select Properties, and then change the name to something that describes the component's role in the dashboard. In this case, something like Select Dimension. You can also give the component a more representative title, such as Dimension. The title is displayed in the title bar of the radio button, where currently it says Radio Button. Press OK to make those changes. Finally, we need to associate the choice that the user makes in this radio button with the dimension that is displayed on the x-axis of the chart. To do this, open the chart editor by pressing the Edit button at the top right corner of the chart, and then find the order date dimension, which is currently set on the x-axis. What we would like to do in this case is, rather than having order date as the fixed x-axis dimension, we would like the dimension on the x-axis to be set by the form element, the radio button that we've added. To do this, click on the small pop-up menu to the right of the field name and select the variable option. This will allow you to use a form component on the dashboard to set the value of the field on the x-axis. From the menu, choose the appropriate form element. In this case, there is only one form element in the dashboard, and that is the radio button that we named Select Dimension. The radio button will now be used to set the field that's displayed on the x-axis of the chart. This can be either state or order date, depending on what the user selects. Finally, to improve the appearance of the dashboard, we'll add a logo and some background. To add a logo, drag an image component from the component panel into the dashboard. Then right-click on the image component, select Properties, and choose an image to upload. Press the Upload button at the bottom, select the image, press Open, and then press OK. The image component now displays the image file that you selected. And then add some backgrounds to give the dashboard a coherent feel. To do this, first we'll add a white rectangle behind all of the components. Find the rectangle component in the component panel. And this by default provides a white rectangle. Right-click on the rectangle and select Send to Back to move the rectangle behind the other components. Drag the handles of the rectangle component so that the rectangle is slightly larger than the group of components currently on the dashboard. If you need to add space at the top of the dashboard, you can either select all of the components and move them down, or you can add rows to the dashboard grid. To do this, right-click on the row header and select Insert Row as many times as required. To provide a framing effect, add a second rectangle. Again, right-click the rectangle and send the rectangle to the back so that it will be behind the other rectangle as well as behind all of the other components, and change the color of the rectangle to something like a pale blue. Then position this rectangle so that it provides the desired framing effect for the dashboard. To create rounded corners on the rectangles, simply right-click on the desired rectangle, select Properties, and under the Shape tab, set the round corner property to the desired value. Larger values provide more gently rounded corners, while smaller values provide sharper corners. To complete the dashboard, add a title. You can do this either by double-clicking in an empty region of the grid, for example here, and typing to add a new text element, or you can find the text component in the component panel and drag that component into the dashboard. Then double-click on the component to edit. Resize the component as needed, and adapt the alignment, the font, and the size as desired. The dashboard is now complete, so go ahead and save the dashboard. Return to the main Dashboards page by clicking the Dashboards tab at the top. And from here you can now access this new order dashboard as a user would by simply clicking on the dashboard. This dashboard is now fully functional and ready to use. In the final section of this video, we'll look at some administrative tasks such as defining users and assigning permissions. To access the administration features, click the Administration tab at the top. The Administration tab provides several pages: status, users, permission, and email. The status page is used to set the license key for the software and also to investigate any errors that may have occurred on the server. If errors have occurred, the number of errors will be displayed here, and you can investigate the details of those errors by pressing the Details button. You can also restore assets from an automatic backup by pressing the Restore button next to the Backups Available From field. This allows you to choose from one of several backups that have been made automatically. The Users page allows you to define groups and users. The table at the top indicates the maximum number of users that are allowed and the number of users that are currently in existence. There are two types of users: view-only users and create and edit users. The number of each type of user that you can create is determined by the licenses that you have installed. To create a new user, press the Add button in the Users table. Enter a name for the new user, a password, and specify an email. If you want this user to be able to create and edit dashboards, select the Create Dashboards role in the Roles table. If you want the user to be able to create and edit datasets as well as to set up database connections, select the Create Datasets and Databases role in the Roles table. Note that the roles that you assign to a user determine the types of operations that the user can perform. However, as the administrator, you can still set permissions for individual users to restrict access to individual dashboards, datasets, and databases. In other words, even if a user has the Create Dashboards or Create Datasets and Databases roles, they will only be able to modify those assets for which they have been assigned permission. If you want this user to be able to only view dashboards, select the Guest option. Note that a guest user does not require a password to log in, and the guest user will not be able to create dashboards, edit dashboards, or create or edit data sets or database connection. In this case, however, we'll assign the Create Datasets and Databases role to this particular user. Press OK, and note that the new user is now listed in the Users table. The icon on the right side indicates that this user has general permission to create data sets and databases, and the licensed user table at the top now shows that there are 2 users in the system who have permission to create and edit, out of a total of 5 users who can be assigned this permission. To edit user information, press the Edit button on the right side of the table next to the user. This allows you to change the user's name, password, email, and roles. To delete a user, press the Delete button to the right side of the user name. To create a new group, press the Add button in the Groups table. Enter the name of the group and select the members who are part of this group. Then press OK. To edit the group information, press the Edit button to the right side of the group name. To delete a group, press the Delete button on the right. To assign permissions to users and groups, select the Permissions option on the left side. Select the asset for which you want to assign permissions. This can be a folder, such as the parent Dashboards folder, Datasets folder, or Databases folder, or a subfolder within one of these folders, for example, the Examples folder within the parent Dashboards folder. You can also assign permissions for the individual assets, such as individual dashboards, individual datasets, or individual database connections. To assign permissions to a folder, select the desired folder, and note that the current permissions for the folder are specified in the table at the bottom. Currently, there are no group permissions specified for this folder, and no user permissions specified for this folder. And note that this folder is currently inheriting these permissions from its parent folder. To assign specific permissions to this examples folder, turn off the Inherit Permissions option, and then press the Add button. From the menu, select the user or group to which you want to assign permissions. To assign permissions to a group, select the desired group from the list. Specify whether you want the permission to extend only to viewing by selecting Read Only, or to extend also to editing the asset by selecting the Read Write option. Note that users in a group who do not have the Create Dashboards role assigned to them will not be able to edit dashboards, even if the group has a read-write permission assigned here. Press OK to save the permission. Note that the engineering group is now displayed in the table with the specified read-write permissions for the examples folder. To add permissions for another group or user to access the examples folder, press the Add button again. Again, select the desired user or group to which you want to provide permission. Note that if a particular user does not have the Create Dashboards role assigned to them, you will not be able to assign the read-write permission to that user. If a user does have the Create Dashboard role assigned to them, then you will be able to select either the read-only option or the read-write option. The selected user is now shown in the table with the specified read-only permission. To edit the permission assigned to a user or group, press the appropriate Edit button to the right of the group or user name. And to delete permission for a user or a group, press the Delete button next to the user or group name. The procedure for assigning permissions to individual dashboards, data sets, and database connections is the same. Select the individual dashboard to which you want to assign permissions. Consult the table at the bottom to see the permissions that are currently in effect. Note that because this dashboard is inheriting its permissions from the parent examples folder, the engineering group has read-write permissions for this dashboard, and user John Smith has read-only permission for this dashboard. These permissions are the same that we set on the parent examples folder, and are being inherited by all of the dashboards in this folder. To assign specific permissions to this particular dashboard, turn off the Inherit Permissions option, and note that this removes all permissions from this particular dashboard. You can then proceed in the same way that we did before to press the Add button and select particular users or groups for which you want to provide read-only or read-write permission to this particular dashboard. To assign permission to particular data sets, return to the top level by clicking the Resources link, and then select the particular data set for which you want to set permission. Consult the table at the bottom to see what permissions are currently in effect for the dataset. The table indicates that there are no group permissions specified, but this dataset can be viewed and edited by all users who are currently allowed to create datasets. That means by all users who have the Create Dataset and Databases role. To assign more specific permissions for this particular dataset, deselect the Inherit Permissions option and press the Add button as we did before. Then select the users or groups to which you want to assign permissions for this dataset. Note that the only users who can be given permission to access a dataset are users who have the Create Datasets and Databases role assigned to them. To assign permissions for a database connection, return to the top level by pressing the Resources link, and then select the particular database connection for which you want to assign permission. Consult the table at the bottom to see what permissions are currently in effect for the database connection. For this particular database connection, there are no group permissions specified. However, the database connection can be viewed and modified by all users who have the Create Datasets and Databases role assigned to them. To assign specific permissions to particular users or groups, deselect the Inherit Permissions option, and press the Add button. Choose the groups or users for which you want to assign permission. Again, note that you can only assign database permissions to users who have the Create Datasets and Databases role assigned to them. The modified permissions are now displayed in the table at the bottom. Finally, in order to use the emailing and scheduling features of Agile Edition, you need to configure the server email. To do that, click the email link at the left-hand side to open the email page and specify the email server information. You can select as the server type either Gmail, Outlook.com, or an SMTP server. When you've entered the required server information, press Apply so that the server will be able to send emails. This allows a user to email a dashboard, for example, by opening the dashboard and then pressing the email button. This also allows a user to schedule a dashboard for automatic generation. To do this, the user can click on the Schedule tab at the top and then press the New Schedule button and enter the information that will determine the schedule on which the dashboard is automatically generated and emailed. If you need further help using Style Scope Agile Edition, please visit the user forum where other users and our staff will be happy to help you with your questions.